welcome to Marketing Without the Marketing. I'm your host, Michael Bosey. Very glad that you could be with me today. Today's topic is comparing Instagram to Snapchat with Instagram's huge new announcement just a couple weeks ago about adding something called Stories to the platform. Now, I had just done a feature episode on Instagram. That was episode 60. And then episode 61 was on Snapchat. So this was kind of timely. And in point of fact, actually the day after I launched episode 60 on Instagram, the day after, it was the day that they announced Stories. So kind of interesting how that worked. Not that I would have been able to comment on it anyway. I wanted for there to be a little bit of time that passed just so I could see what it was like and, just get a sense of what's important to you in this podcast, which is how does that apply to my business? So I want that to sort of marinate a little bit. And of course, there was a lot of commenting going on about a lot of posts written, a lot of folks on the platforms themselves trying them out, trying to make some quick assessments, and I really appreciate that. And learned a lot from all those folks, but, I want to experience it for myself and then help you try to make some determinations. So let's look at that today. There are a couple big advantages and disadvantages to both Instagram stories and Snapchat stories. Now, first, if you don't know what a story is in the parlance of each of these platforms, basically it's a series of either photos or short videos that are chained together in a narrative. And Snapchat was the one that made this popular, and then Instagram blatantly copied it. I mean, it's a direct copy of Snapchat. There's virtually no difference whatsoever, which is just, as I mentioned in the last episode, a little disappointing on Zuckerberg's part because Facebook owns Instagram. But so it is, and we'll see. It's very possible Instagram is a more mature platform, and it has the potential to be the winner in this. Like, we don't know for sure whether or not Snapchat, even though they were the first mover, are going to be the ultimate winners in this. It could very well be Instagram. So it is. But basically, the opportunity here is to communicate with your audience via these narratives. And of course, you want to make that consistent with your brand and use it to tell stories about you, your business, the people who work there, the things that you do, the things that light you up, your passions, your mission, all of that. It's a great opportunity for either one of those things. And the big thing about stories for both of these is that they disappear after 24 hours. So you produce the content. Hopefully your folks are going to come to see it. The ones who are following you, creates this little sense of urgency around it, right? This scarcity. So they got to come and check in with you, which is great for marketers. But it sort of takes the pressure off as well in a way, right? Because if you know these things are going to disappear in 24 hours, it means you don't need to go in and produce hyper-professional content. And incidentally, that's been a big thing for Instagram, right? So this gets really interesting. So let's look at the advantages and disadvantages so that you can make a determination as to whether or not one of these or the other or both are going to be good for you and your brand. Okay, let's start with Instagram. Instagram's big advantage and probably the key thing for, is it going to win or not in this space is, let's face it, it's much easier to find and follow new people on Instagram. Facebook, Instagram's owner, has been at this a long time at this point in social media years, and they're really good at this. So it's very, very easy to do that, and this is still a persistent weakness of Snapchat. It's very hard to find and grow new audience on Snapchat. You're still relying on third-party apps and kind of connecting with people in other spaces and bringing them back to Snapchat. So in other words, it's not really a part of their platform on Snapchat. And that remains a huge weakness, and it's just an enormous advantage for Instagram to grow this portion of its service, in other words, Instagram Stories, in a quick and meaningful way. Now, on the other side, the huge advantage of Snapchat, is that it is a first mover in the space, and let's not underestimate loyalty. Snapchat started this whole thing with stories and snaps, and just the whole rubric is theirs. And the people who love Snapchat really love Snapchat. So don't underestimate that. People might stick with it because, one, it's what they know, and two, their audience is already there, right? So those folks, the big players in Snapchat, the ones who are really rocking it right now, are they really going to move their audience over to Instagram? Probably not. But they might see the advantage of Instagram to, building a new audience there. You could easily see that happening. And then the other big advantage of Snapchat is that the app itself can do everything all in one app. This is a big difference from Instagram. Think about it. Basically, it allows you to send text messages, send video messages like Skype. It allows you, in effect, make phone calls. It's just a way better app for one-to-one communication. Hands down, Snapchat is way better about that, which is why it feels so personal. Now, for the disadvantages, Instagram, it's kind of already set in what it does, right? So in other words, it's about sharing photos, and then recently about sharing short videos. Now, while that doesn't seem like a big jump in this move to stories and the way people use the platform, being set in what it does, can people relearn a use? Right? So for instance, like the little ring around the profile picture that indicates that there's a story there. Will people get that? Will they understand that if they're longtime users? Look, this is a small thing, but who knows, right? People think of Instagram as one particular thing, and it's often very hard with a web app and other services, frankly, for people to get out of the thing that they think of the platform, right? They're used to using it one way, and it's very hard for people to sort of envision another use. Now, of course, there are going to be tons of creative people who figure out a way around that, but it's a limiter, let's face it. Now, the big disadvantage of Snapchat, like I said, they're still relying on third-party apps and huge workarounds to build an audience, and this has to change in Snapchat. Snapchat is evolving very quickly, but look, it's kind of moving out of the new player phase and into a more mature phase. And it can't rely on being the cool new app long term. And every good app, every one that lasts, goes through that phase, right? And it starts to change as it matures. And we're seeing that right now in Snapchat. But the other big thing is just, and it kind of goes hand in hand with this, is Snapchat's user interface is extremely difficult to use, especially for new users. And as I mentioned in the last episode of this podcast, I think that this was intentional to make the people who really love it, in other words, the younger demographic that they were going after as the sort of first movers in this, to make it sort of natural for them and to kind of deter the older generation, the older demographic from using it. I do think that this was intentional from the start. But listen, if they're going to grow a huge audience, this whole thing is a deterrent to new users. And if you need proof of that, just ask my wife. We use the platform, chatter back and forth throughout the day, but she still hates it. And, that's a problem. So that's not going to be her natural go-to unless I snap her first, you know what I mean? And it's the same thing with other friends of mine too. It's like, Snapchat, time to get with it. If you're going to grow this into a real major player, like everyone projects you to be, you got to fix this. All right, so let's bring this around and bring it home to the point of this, which is for business use. So strategically, let's apply this to your business. A lot of people whom I follow on Snapchat in particular are talking about the question that's really very interesting to me, which is now that Instagram Stories is available, and especially for those folks who are very conversant in Snapchat and have built an audience around that or have a nice sized audience, will those people start to create different types of content for each platform? Now, to me, this is a no-brainer. This makes perfect sense, right? Every audience is different, so that means every context is different. That means that you need different content. So while people are asking this question, to me, the answer is yes, you do have to do that. Every community that you build is unique. And yes, each community may share members across each community, but a community is an assemblage of different people, and each one is going to take on a different character. And that means, of course, you're going to have to create different content for that. So just like any other network, you're not going to be able to sort of rely on exactly the same thing. But in any content strategy, what you're going to do is try to share content as much as you can, but to change contextual clues. Right. So the obvious example is, for instance, suppose you write a post for Facebook and you write one for LinkedIn. You're going to make some contextual changes for each of those. It could be largely the same content, but you're going to make some changes just to make sure it doesn't hit the wrong note on each platform. Same thing, like hashtags are a big one. You can use a lot of hashtags in Instagram, for instance. You can use hashtags in Twitter, but not as many hashtags. And you absolutely cannot use hashtags in LinkedIn, or people are going to know that you've been cross-posting and just not paying any attention to the contextual cues of that community. And that's a big no-no. And look, you're going to be seen as sort of an imposter if you do, or you'll be giving off the vibe that, look, I don't really care about this community. I'm just trying to, minimize my time or optimize my time on social media. And that's not the type of vibe that you want to send off. You want to show people in your community that you really care, that you're a part of it, that you understand the go words, the stop words, the language that's used, all of that. Really, really important. Okay, but back to strategy. What I'd recommend is, like I would with any other platform, is to try both of these and try different things with each audience because they're different. Try out some different things and see what happens. Again, treat it like an experiment. I say this all the time. Introduce a stimulus into the environment, into the social media app or platform. Watch what happens, observe, make controlled changes to one variable if you can. You're thinking like a scientist. Watch what happens and then try to control for another variable until you start to learn the cues of each of these audiences or communities. And so think of your Instagram audience, right? If you're using Instagram for business right now, what is it that they want? Why do they follow you? Is it because you post cool travel pics or arty photos? Or are they actually looking for some behind-the-scenes stuff from you? And there's only one way to find out, which is to try some of these things out and observe what happens. Now, with Snapchat, your audience probably does want the behind-the-scenes stuff from you. That's what's really great about the platform. The sort of all-in-one aspect of Snapchat, which I was talking about earlier, really fosters that feeling, right? That sort of, hey, snap me back, right? Right in the middle of the story, you can just ask people for their feedback, and you can do it kind of in the form of a text message. That's super easy to do in Snapchat, and it's encouraged. And look, it's not to say that you can't do this in Instagram. You can, but it's really not a part of the natural lexicon of Instagram. People are used to posting comments, just like in the other social media networks. Snapchat is different. And posting comments in Instagram is very, very different from the feeling of a one-to-one contact. Now, these are little nuances to be sure, but they're going to make a big difference to how people feel about you and the interactions that you're having. So just consider that as you go through this and you're trying these things out. And, I say this over and over again, but like any of these platforms, it's about you, your audience, and the points where you intersect. And you have to find out where that is. And that's going to be unique to you and your business, and you got to find that out for yourself. And that's probably a good point to end this, because really that's pretty much a good last word on this. And really that whole thing is going to carry through to Instagram stories, to Snapchat stories, and any other platform that you use. Now, to find me on Instagram or Snapchat, I'm mboezi. That's MBOEZI on each of these platforms. And like I said in the last episode, I don't really use either of these very directly for business, just to sort of show off my creative side, which might tangentially be of business benefit to me. But connect with me there anyway. And look, perhaps you're going to use that the same way too, right? Where it's just to show another side of you. That's a great use for either of these. Or you may jump into a much more concerted, planned effort. Either way, have fun with it, connect with people, and most of all, help them in some way, right? Entertain them with interesting content, educate them about something you know really well and can teach them, inspire them to do something good, or even enlighten them, right? Challenge them to think differently about things. And, I try to do all of those things here, though I joke with my wife that often this podcast might be educational, inspirational, enlightening, but rarely entertaining. And I even say that about the music that I write, which is kind of funny. But, it's kind of in my nature, always trying to teach something or always trying to inform. So, that's what you get from me. So, but I hope that I taught you something today, or at least gave you something to think about with this little rundown of these two platforms. And hey, let me hear from you. Hit me up in the comments section, or on Instagram or Snapchat, or Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. I'm Boezi on all of those. That's Boezi. And if you're feeling, extra generous today and you're listening to this on iTunes, just leave me a quick one-line review about what you like about this show, or what I can do better. That would be awesome. I'd really appreciate that. All right, thanks everyone. Let me know how your stories go, whichever platform you choose. Just get out there, try it, have fun, and we'll catch you next week.